Did you know that in ancient China, eunuchs had to carry their deceased private parts with them at all times in a wooden box? And although losing your precious nuts might seem bad at first, eunuchs have actually been integral to various civilizations for centuries, often holding significant roles in royal courts and administrations. The practice of castrating men for societal functions dates back thousands of years, as they were seen as loyal and non-threatening, thus being ideal for roles near the king and his harem. And as the weather is so extremely beautiful today, I've decided to take you on a journey as wild as possible, through a history full of the best and the worst eunuchs there have ever lived, because stormy days deserve special occasions. Try and give it your best to hang in there until the end, as those who watch till the end make the best jokes at the family Christmas dinner table. So, without further ado, let's look at some crazy facts about eunuchs. The concept of eunuchs, men castrated for societal roles, did not exist in early human tribes. These societies, lacking complex social structures, relied on all members, including men, for survival tasks like hunting and protection. Castration was neither practical nor beneficial in such contexts. Unlike later civilizations, early tribes lacked bureaucratic or religious institutions that employed eunuchs. They operated on communal living principles, with roles based on physical ability and immediate skills rather than strict hierarchies. The division of labor was fluid and necessity-driven. Historical evidence indicates that the rise of agricultural societies and city-states led to the practice of castrating men for specific roles. This marked a shift from the egalitarian hunter-gatherer groups to more stratified societies where eunuchs became prevalent. Ancient Mesopotamia, situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is often deemed the cradle of civilization. By 2500 BC, Mesopotamians were pioneering urban societies, legal systems, and bureaucratic administrations. Historical records from cities like Lagash and Uruk indicate that eunuchs existed and served various roles in both religious and secular capacities. They were frequently appointed as palace officials, scribes, and priests. The exact reasons and methods for creating eunuchs remain debated by scholars, but inscriptions indicate that eunuchs were considered trustworthy and less likely to engage in familial power struggles. Tablets from King Shulgi of Ur's reign, from about 2094 to 2047 BC, provide detailed accounts of eunuchs administering temples and palaces. These eunuchs wielded considerable influence and played key roles in Mesopotamian governance and religion. Eunuchs played significant roles in various ancient civilizations, but their presence in ancient Egypt is debated among scholars. Unlike civilizations like China or the Ottoman Empire, clear evidence of eunuchs in Egypt is limited. Some argue that the absence of specific terms for eunuchs in Egyptian texts complicates their verification. However, carvings and literature references subtly suggest their presence. Ancient Egyptian society was hierarchical and bureaucratic, with a complex system of administrators and courtiers. Some records hint at individuals who might have been eunuchs, described as keeper of the royal harem, or attendants to female royalty. These roles, though not explicitly requiring castration, align with typical eunuch duties in other cultures. Indirect evidence comes from medical papyri detailing surgeries and bodily alterations, indicating knowledge of practices like castration. This suggests that castration could have been performed, even if not well documented. The debate continues as scholars explore language, art, and indirect clues. The debate around the title, Keeper of the Royal Harem, is fascinating. This role entailed overseeing the pharaoh's wives and concubines, demanding utmost trust and impartiality. Lucius Flavius Philostratus, an ancient Greek writer, mentioned eunuchs in Egypt in his accounts of Apollonius of Tyana. He describes visiting Egypt and meeting individuals with roles akin to eunuchs in sacred and royal domains. However, this account is from centuries after early ancient Egyptian history, complicating historical accuracy. Certain wall reliefs and inscriptions depict figures near the queen or royal household who might have been eunuchs. Though these images lack explicit identifiers, the portrayal of these attendants shares traits with known eunuch depictions in other cultures. Egypt's interaction with neighboring regions, where eunuchs were more common and documented, could have influenced their practices. For example, interactions with regions like Assyria or Persia, where eunuchs were prevalent, suggest a cultural exchange of norms, including employing eunuchs in administrative or protective roles. Ancient Greeks had similar attitudes. Early Greek literature, such as Homer's works, lacks mentions of eunuchs, suggesting their rarity. By the classical period, evidence of eunuchs appears, primarily linked to Eastern influences. Greek historians, including Herodotus, wrote about eunuchs serving the Persian Empire and some wealthy Greeks acquired eunuchs as exotic servants. Despite this, eunuchs were not widely incorporated into Greek society or government. The practice of castration clashed with Greek values, celebrating masculinity and the male body. Eunuchs entered Greek society mainly through cultural interactions during Alexander the Great's era. Greek exposure to Persian customs, including the use of eunuchs, increased significantly. Alexander reportedly employed eunuchs, mirroring Persian practices. These eunuchs served as personal attendants and administrators. Greek sources often depicted eunuchs with a sense of otherness and occasional disdain, viewing them as symbols of decadence and foreign luxury, which contrasted with Greek ideals of freedom and citizenship. This outsider status restricted their integration and influence within Greek society. While eunuchs were present in ancient Greece, their roles were limited and shaped by foreign influences rather than native traditions. And when usually you can be sure that the Spartans had something to do with it, then no, they definitely didn't castrate men for any reason whatsoever. In ancient Rome, on the other hand, eunuchs, castrated men, existed, though they were more common in Eastern cultures. In Rome, eunuchs often held significant roles within the imperial household and religious contexts. Castration, the removal of testicles, was performed for various reasons, including enabling men to serve in trusted positions or incapacitating slaves for specific tasks. By the early imperial period, eunuchs became a distinct group associated with power and intrigue in the Roman court. They served as chamberlains, personal attendants, and advisors to emperors. Eunuchs were considered reliable because they could not marry or father children, making them less likely to engage in dynastic politics. The use of eunuchs in royal courts was a tradition borrowed from Eastern empires like Persia and later adapted by Rome. Despite their significant roles, they were often viewed with suspicion and stigma. However, their indispensability in Roman administrative and domestic spheres cannot be understated. Eunuchs in ancient Rome were prominent in religious practices as well, particularly in the cult of Cybele, serving as Galli, or priests. These priests underwent voluntary castration to show devotion to the goddess. The Galli held significant religious influence and were known for their ecstatic rituals. Eunuchs also served in the households of wealthy Romans, managing domestic affairs as trusted slaves or freedmen. Their unique status often granted them considerable influence within these households. Despite their roles, eunuchs faced societal restrictions and stigmas. Legal texts indicate they were often barred from holding public office or military command. In the later Roman Empire, eunuchs' roles evolved significantly. They became pivotal in Byzantine politics, holding key military and administrative positions. Influential figures like Narses commanded armies and executed intricate political maneuvers. Their loyalty to the emperor made them crucial for maintaining stability. However, their growing influence led to increased scrutiny and suspicion. Despite their contributions, eunuchs were often depicted negatively in literature and historical accounts as scheming and untrustworthy. But what is the medical and scientific perspective on eunuchs and castration? As castration involves removing testicles and sometimes the penis, it causes significant hormonal changes. Without testes, eunuchs do not produce testosterone, leading to distinctive physical and physiological changes, such as a lack of facial hair and higher-pitched voices. Additionally, eunuchs generally have reduced muscle mass. The physiological effects of being a eunuch extend beyond appearance. Lack of testosterone weakens bone density, increasing fracture risk. Eunuchs also exhibit slower metabolism, leading to higher body fat. The absence of testosterone causes infertility, affecting social roles. Ancient scientists and physicians noted these changes, though their understanding was limited compared to modern medicine. Contemporary studies delve deeper into the hormonal and genetic aspects of eunuchs. Hormone replacement therapy is used today to address health issues from lack of testosterone, mitigating risks like osteoporosis and cardiovascular problems. Genetic studies reveal specific gene expressions altered by the absence of testosterone, enhancing our understanding of the hormone-gene relationship. Psychological studies suggest that the lack of testosterone affects mood and cognitive function. Modern research supports that testosterone maintains mental well-being and cognitive sharpness. Eunuchs, lacking this hormone, may have experienced different psychological states compared to non-castrated males. However, historical records indicate that many eunuchs adapted to their roles and excelled in their duties, showing resilience and capability despite their condition. And eunuchs even have parallels in nature. Certain animals exhibit similar traits. For instance, some ant species produce sterile worker ants, females who cannot reproduce but perform essential tasks like foraging and defense. This sterile caste is also seen in other eusocial insects, such as bees and termites, where specific individuals focus on colony survival rather than reproduction. Parasitic wasps display a form of eunuchism. Some male wasps develop without sexual organs, dedicating themselves to protecting and supporting their siblings. This is notably observed in fig wasps, where sterile males help ensure their fertile siblings can reproduce. Certain marine animals also exhibit non-reproductive roles. Clownfish live in strict hierarchies. Non-dominant males maintain their anemone homes without breeding. Naked mole rats in East Africa have a eusocial structure where only the queen and select males breed, while others remain sterile, caring for the nest and defending it. These examples illustrate that while the term eunuch is specific to humans, the concept of individuals losing or never developing reproductive abilities is widespread in the animal kingdom, serving crucial, non-reproductive roles for group survival. Back in the human realm, in African history, eunuchs served in royal courts as advisors, guards, and administrators. In the Kingdom of Benin from 13th to 19th centuries, modern-day Nigeria, eunuchs, known as Ilari, managed palace affairs. In the Kingdom of Dahomey from 17th and 18th centuries, modern-day Benin, they managed harems and other duties. But the role of eunuchs in African history extended beyond political and administrative duties. In Ethiopia, during the Aksumite Empire from 100 to 940 AD, and later, eunuchs served in courts, overseeing the royal treasury and managing crucial state documents. The process of becoming a eunuch often involved significant rituals and ceremonies, underscoring the importance and sanctity of their roles. Some eunuchs were captured slaves, while others volunteered, seeking power and influence. Eunuchs profoundly impacted African societies, shaping culture, governance, and history. Travelers and scholars documented their roles, providing insights into their significance. For example, Arab historian al-Makrizi detailed the influence of eunuchs in 15th century Mamluk Egypt. Additionally, the presence of eunuchs in African slave trades highlights a darker historical aspect, reflecting their demand in various roles across continents. Often castrated and sold, they endured brutal conditions. But who have been the most famous eunuchs throughout history? Well, there are a few who have impacted the world we live in more than others. One, for example, was born in the Byzantine Empire, named Narses, an Armenian-born general around 478 AD, who rose to prominence under Emperor Justinian I. A master strategist, he led the Byzantine army to key victories in the Gothic War, notably at the Battle of Taganai in 552 AD, helping to re-establish imperial control over Italy. Similarly, Zheng He, a Chinese admiral during the Ming Dynasty, was captured and castrated as a boy to serve in the imperial court. Born in 1371, he commanded 7 maritime expeditions from 1405 to 1433, extending China's influence to the east coast of Africa and demonstrating its naval strength. In more recent years, during the Qing dynasty in China, Li Lianying was a prominent eunuch who wielded considerable influence. Serving Empress Dowager Cixi from 1869 until her death, Li became one of the most powerful men in the imperial court. His control over court affairs and his role as a close advisor to Cixi allowed him to amass significant wealth and political power. However, the existence of eunuchs in ancient Japan remains debated among historians. Unlike China, where eunuchs held significant court positions, historical evidence of their widespread presence in Japan is limited. Some theories suggest Japanese culture and social structures did not favor eunuchs. Additionally, the dominant religions, Shintoism and Buddhism, may have discouraged such practices. Sparse historical references indicate eunuchs possibly served in minor roles, but these mentions are neither detailed nor frequent. During the Heian period, 794 to 1185, Japanese court life was intricate and sophisticated, but it lacked the dominant eunuch presence seen in other Asian courts like the Tang dynasty in China. Historical records, such as the Tale of Genji, do not mention eunuchs in court administration or daily life. Roles typically filled by eunuchs in other cultures were assigned to women or trusted male advisors in Japan. While there are accounts of castrated individuals in Japanese history, these were rare and usually punishments for crimes rather than for court service. From the Kamakura period, from 1185 to 1333 to the Edo period, spanning from 1603 to 1868, Japan saw almost no eunuchs. Unlike China's centralized bureaucracies, Japan's decentralized feudal system had no need for eunuchs in governance. The samurai class wielded significant power, and the Bushido code dominated societal values, emphasizing martial virtues and loyalty, leaving no role for eunuchs. Japanese literature and legal documents from these periods rarely mention eunuchs, and when they do, These individuals are anomalies rather than a recognized class. Eunuchs hold a notable place in the history of many Asian countries, and while they didn't exist much in Japan, they were deeply included in Korean history. In Korea, eunuchs, called naesi, were pivotal in the royal court, especially during the Goryeo and Joseon dynasties. Serving as confidants and servants to the royal family, naesi often wielded significant influence. Their duties ranged from managing court affairs to acting as intermediaries between the king and the outside world. Becoming a eunuch was a rigorous process. Boys, often from low-income families or war captives, were castrated before puberty to ensure their reliability, as they could not engage in dynastic politics through direct lineages. Once accepted into the court, eunuchs underwent extensive training in subjects like writing, accounting, diplomacy, and management. They were trusted with sensitive tasks, including safeguarding royal secrets and managing treasury affairs. Eunuchs could ascend to powerful positions, serving as the king's advisors or even regents. Despite their significant roles, their personal lives were closely monitored and restricted by the state's security apparatus. Eunuchs were sometimes adopted by childless court couples, securing their social standing and allowing them to accumulate wealth and power. However, their position was precarious, often facing suspicion and hostility from officials who saw them as competitors for royal favor. This reliance on eunuchs highlighted deeper issues within the Korean political system, such as loyalty and corruption. The decline of the eunuch system in Korea coincided with the end of the Joseon dynasty and the pressures of modernization. As Korea opened to foreign interactions in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, societal structures transformed. Modern reforms by the Korean Empire and Japanese colonial rule diminished the traditional role of eunuchs. By the early 20th century, the practice of employing eunuchs had significantly waned. The last known eunuchs lived away from the political sphere, and castration for court service was abolished. Eunuchs have also played significant roles in art, literature, and music. In literature, they often symbolize themes like loyalty, betrayal, power, and emasculation. For instance, Varys in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series embodies the cunning and manipulative traits often attributed to eunuchs. In music, the contributions of castrati, male singers castrated before puberty to retain their high-pitched voices, are notable. This practice was prevalent in Italy from the 16th to the 18th centuries. Farinelli, a celebrated castrato, gained immense fame across Europe for his vocal range and technique, underscoring the significant yet controversial role of eunuchs in music history. Additionally, eunuchs in some cultures were notable patrons of the arts. In the Ottoman Empire, Chief Black Eunuch Kızlar, Aga sponsored various architectural and artistic endeavors, enriching the cultural tapestry of the period. Eunuchs significantly influenced the arts. In Chinese opera, where women were barred from performing, eunuchs often played female roles with exceptional grace and skill, most notably in the Peking opera of the late 18th century. In the Mughal Empire, eunuchs were prominent patrons of art and music, serving as guardians of royal harems. Khwaja Sara Roshan Ara, a celebrated patron of music during Emperor Aurangzeb's 17th century reign, exemplifies this. European Renaissance artists like Caravaggio and Titian depicted eunuchs, exploring themes of ambiguity and transformation. And while the concept of eunuchs, castrated males, is well documented in ancient Asian and Mediterranean civilizations, the existence of eunuchs in pre-colonial Americas remains under-researched and poorly evidenced. There are no widespread records or direct references to the institutionalized castration of males in Aztec, Maya, Inca, or other native cultures before European arrival. Roles typically associated with eunuchs, such as harem guards or court officials, were not evident in pre-colonial American societies. Some historians argue that the complex socio-political systems of pre-Columbian civilizations, like the Maya and Aztec, rendered eunuchs impractical or unnecessary. Others believe evidence may have been lost or destroyed during European conquest. Spanish chronicles do not directly indicate the practice, but describe intricate social hierarchies. And although the Quetzalcoatl cult in ancient Mesoamerica and the Timbira society in Brazil have been mentioned in discussions about gender and castration, they do not provide conclusive evidence of eunuchs. The Quetzalcoatl cult, part of the Aztec and Toltec religions, involved self-sacrifice and bloodletting, yet no records indicate castration. Linguistic evidence from native languages has not suggested a term or concept analogous to eunuchs. Concrete archaeological or textual evidence has yet to surface to definitively answer whether eunuchs existed in pre-colonial Americas. When Europeans arrived in the Americas, they documented many facets of native cultures through their own cultural lenses, often leading to misunderstandings or misinterpretations of local customs. European chroniclers focused more on describing new lands and peoples, rather than delving into the nuances of indigenous social systems. If practices resembling those of eunuchs existed, they might have been overlooked or misrepresented. Indigenous cultures were dramatically altered by European colonization, which included social, political, and demographic disruptions. The Spanish conquest of Latin America marked a period where European cultural norms were transplanted into the New World, including the use of eunuchs. In colonial Latin America, eunuchs were often found in slavery and servitude contexts, frequently brought from Africa, where certain regions practiced the castration of slaves before transportation. The demand for eunuchs in household roles, particularly as trusted attendants in elite households, echoed earlier practices seen in European and Asian courts. Records indicate these individuals were valued for their perceived loyalty and inability to procreate, minimizing sexual liaisons' risks and ensuring complete devotion to their masters. In the Caribbean, especially in Brazil and Cuba, eunuchs worked in plantations, both in fields and households. This practice extended African and European traditions. The exact number of eunuchs brought to the Americas is unclear, but their impact was notable in specific social strata. In prominent households, eunuchs often served as intermediaries between European colonialists and other enslaved people. They were sometimes placed in managerial roles due to the trust their masters had in them. Some historical accounts indicate eunuchs could gain favor and influence within these settings. Despite their elevated status compared to other enslaved people, eunuchs still faced significant social and personal challenges. They were often ostracized and looked down upon by peers due to their physical condition and close alignment with their oppressors. Eunuchs in post-colonial Americas extended their roles to religious and cultural institutions. Some joined the Catholic Church, where their celibacy aligned with church requirements, often serving as choir members. Eunuchs also held unique positions in indigenous communities, participating in rituals and mediating tribal disputes. The historical presence of eunuchs in post-colonial Americas remains a lesser-known aspect of the era. Despite limited documentation, their roles in various societal levels were significant. Their existence highlights how Old World customs adapted to New World realities, deepening our understanding of the period's social dynamics. And here's a message to my precious wife, who never listens to these documentaries. Thanks for putting our son to bed tonight, so I can focus on this script and further feed our family. Coming back to eunuchs, as weird as that may sound, maybe the most intriguing eunuch history comes from ancient China. Eunuchs have been integral to Chinese history since the Shang dynasty, spanning from 1600 to 1046 BC. Initially, eunuchs were prisoners of war or those punished by castration. Over time, they became influential figures in the Chinese court, serving in essential roles within the imperial household. By the Han Dynasty, from 206 BC to 220 AD, eunuchs wielded considerable influence over state affairs and could command military forces. Their power peaked during later dynasties, notably the Ming. During the Han Dynasty, eunuchs managed the imperial library and archives, acting as intermediaries between the emperor and officials. Their education and proximity to the emperor enabled many eunuchs to gain substantial power and wealth. Some became confidants of the emperor, influencing administrative decisions and military campaigns. The power wielded by eunuchs often led to court intrigues and power struggles, resulting in violent purges where eunuchs were executed or exiled. Key figures included Zhang Rang, a prominent eunuch who wielded considerable influence during the late Eastern Han Dynasty. Additionally, Gao Lishi, serving under Emperor Xuanzong, wielded considerable court influence, exemplifying the significant role eunuchs played in court politics during this period. Eunuchs' influence persisted into the Tang Dynasty, dating from 618 to 907 AD. The Tang government heavily relied on eunuchs for their administrative skills, significantly enhancing their power. Eunuchs served as gatekeepers to the emperor, controlling access and often acting as kingmakers. The prominence of eunuchs persisted into the Song and Yuan dynasties. Although their influence waned compared to the Tang dynasty, eunuchs still wielded considerable power. In the Song dynasty, they managed the inner palace and ensured the emperor's security. During the Yuan dynasty, the Mongol rulers expanded eunuchs' roles to include diplomatic missions. Despite their lower status compared to Mongol nobles, eunuchs exerted significant control over court affairs due to their close relationship with the emperor. The Yuan period also introduced foreign eunuchs, who served and gained favor with the Mongol rulers. Eunuchs reached the zenith of their power during the Ming dynasty, spanning from 1368 to 1644 AD. They held influential positions in the imperial court, with figures like Zheng He becoming renowned. Zheng He, a eunuch admiral, led monumental maritime voyages that expanded China's influence across the Indian Ocean. Eunuchs controlled the Directorate of Ceremonial, supervised palace construction, and managed state monopolies, making them integral to Ming governance. The Ming emperor's reliance on eunuchs often resulted in corruption and factional strife, as these powerful servants manipulated court politics. The Tumu Crisis of 1449, where eunuchs' mismanagement led to a devastating defeat, highlighted the dangers of their unchecked power. With the Qing dynasty, dating 1644 to 1912 AD, the role of eunuchs changed significantly. Early Qing emperors, learning from the Ming dynasty, aimed to curtail eunuch power. Measures limited their roles to managing the inner palace, reducing their involvement in state and military affairs. The Qing government introduced stricter regulations to prevent eunuchs from amassing power. Despite these efforts, some eunuchs still wielded influence through close relationships with the emperor and imperial family, but their overall power was reduced compared to previous dynasties. One of the last notable Qing eunuchs, Li Lianying, served Empress Dowager Cixi. The fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912 ended the historic role of eunuchs in Chinese governance. The Republic of China abolished the imperial court, dismantling the structures that had sustained eunuchs for centuries. Many former eunuchs faced unemployment and hardship, with some taking humble jobs. Historical records and personal accounts from this period highlight their drastic and often heartbreaking transitions. The last imperial eunuch, Sun Yaoting, lived until 1996, providing valuable first-hand insights into this unique class of court officials. And now that we've explored almost all human history until medieval Europe, I think it's time we delved into the lives of eunuchs in medieval Europe. Here we go. Eunuchs were indeed also present in medieval Europe, though less prominently. Unlike their Byzantine counterparts, Western European eunuchs rarely held military or political positions. The Catholic Church employed eunuchs in various roles, including choir singers, later known as castrati, who retained their high-pitched, prepubescent voices. The Schola Cantorum in Rome, founded by Pope Gregory the Great in the 6th century, featured eunuch singers performing liturgical music. Although detailed records are sparse, eunuchs were notably present in ecclesiastical settings. The use of eunuchs as church musicians declined in the late Middle Ages, but briefly revived during the Renaissance with the rise of castrati in Italian church choirs. In the 11th century English monarch Edward the Confessor's court, eunuch officials sometimes held power, but did not receive the same acceptance and authority as their Byzantine counterparts. Castration practices in Western Europe were often secretive and stigmatized, influenced by complex social, religious, and moral views. Still, both societies recognized, to varying extents, the unique capabilities eunuchs could bring to specialized roles. But before we hop on to modern times, let's see how different religions throughout the world view eunuchs. First up, Judaism. Eunuchs have a significant role in Judaic history, often serving as administrators, harem guardians, and court officials. The Hebrew Bible references eunuchs in multiple contexts. In Isaiah 56:3-5, a passage offers hope to eunuchs, suggesting those who keep God's Sabbaths and uphold His covenant will receive a name better than sons and daughters, indicating spiritual acceptance despite their condition. In Jeremiah 38:7-13, Ebed-Melech, an Ethiopian eunuch, saves the prophet Jeremiah from a cistern, showcasing their impact in critical moments of Jewish history. Eunuchs are also prominent in rabbinic literature, which examines their legal and social status. The Mishnah, a central rabbinic Judaism text, addresses eunuchs in marriage laws, showing their defined societal roles and integration. The Talmud further elaborates on their treatment and status, providing insights into their perception and interactions within the Jewish community. Eunuchs in Judaism played roles beyond biblical texts. Historical records from the Second Temple period onward show eunuchs in various societal capacities. During this period, eunuchs were present in royal courts, often serving as close advisors. In the Talmudic era, Jewish scholars debated the halakhic implications of eunuch status, discussing their participation in religious rituals and communal life. The Talmud mentions different types of eunuchs, such as those born that way, or saris chama, and those made so by human intervention, called saris adam, each with distinct legal ramifications. Eunuchs were also seen as protectors of women and children, entrusted with safeguarding households. But eunuchs in Judaism faced significant challenges. Their physical condition often marginalized them, leading to varying degrees of acceptance within the Jewish community. Rabbinic literature outlines specific laws for eunuchs, including restrictions on marriage and certain religious duties. Eunuchs were prohibited from becoming priests or kohanim and barred from certain ritualistic practices. Nonetheless, their contributions in non-religious roles, such as administration and protection, were undeniable. The spiritual acceptance mentioned in prophetic books offered some solace and recognition for their status. In modern times, perceptions and roles of eunuchs have evolved significantly. Traditional views persist in some Orthodox circles, but contemporary Judaism tends to adopt a more inclusive approach, recognizing the historical contributions of eunuchs. And now, Christianity. Eunuchs in Christianity have a complex history. Early Christian texts often mention eunuchs, with the most notable reference in the New Testament's Gospel of Matthew 19:12, where Jesus says, "For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are those who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven." This passage is widely interpreted to signify various forms of celibacy, both chosen and imposed. In the Eastern Orthodox Church's monastic traditions, eunuch monks were respected for their commitment to celibacy, embodying virtues of chastity and devotion. This respect created a unique social niche for eunuchs within Christian societies during certain historical periods. Eunuchs held significant roles within the early Christian church hierarchy. Early Christianity often sought to diminish the stigma of castration by viewing eunuchs as models of purity and devotion. In the 4th century, Byzantine eunuchs served as trusted officials within church authority. Some became deacons and bishops, underscoring their importance in the religious structure. Origen of Alexandria, an early Christian scholar and theologian, is believed to have castrated himself to avoid sexual temptation, though this account remains debated. By the Renaissance, the role of eunuchs in Christianity had significantly decreased. The Council of Trent in 1545-1563 reaffirmed the prohibition against castration, emphasizing the dignity and sanctity of the human body. The Reformation and Counter-Reformation further marginalized eunuchs in ecclesiastical roles. Remnants of the tradition persisted in liturgical music, where castrati performed in some churches until the 18th century. The last known castrato, Alessandro Moreschi, recorded performances in the early 20th century. The decline of eunuchs in Christianity mirrored broader social and theological shifts, focusing on bodily integrity and changing attitudes toward celibacy and piety. Next up, Buddhism. The role of eunuchs in Buddhism is an often overlooked aspect of this major world religion's history. Eunuchs, known as pandaka in Pali texts, were individuals with ambiguous sexual characteristics or those who had undergone castration. The term pandaka appears in early Buddhist scriptures, discussing their roles and status within the monastic community to varying extents. Early Buddhist texts generally approach eunuchs with ambivalence, reflecting broader societal views of the time. Some scriptures depict them as individuals with diminished spiritual capabilities. However, their presence in Buddhist texts provides insight into the social dynamics of ancient Indian society. While certain texts suggest restrictions on their ordination, others highlight their integration into the Buddhist community and potential for spiritual development. Buddhist communities were diverse, and the inclusion of eunuchs indicates the religion's broad human scope. The Buddha himself accepted followers from all walks of life, preaching universal salvation and enlightenment. Despite varying degrees of acceptance, eunuchs found a place within the Buddhist narrative, contributing to its rich and complex history. The ordination of eunuchs in Buddhism is complex. Early Buddhist texts restrict their ordination, believing their sexual characteristics limit spiritual potential. The Vinaya Pitaka includes specific regulations on eunuchs, reflecting ancient Indian gender norms and biases. Acceptance varied among Buddhist sects and regions. Some sects allowed eunuchs full participation in monastic life, while others imposed stricter limitations. While some texts and traditions imposed limitations, overarching Buddhist principles of compassion and inclusivity often led to greater acceptance over time. Eunuchs in Buddhism played roles beyond ordination regulations, often serving as caretakers, cooks, and attendants in monastic communities. Their presence was crucial to daily operations, highlighting their practical importance despite doctrinal constraints. King Asoka's edicts notably mention eunuchs among groups deserving respect and support, indicating that they were sometimes afforded dignity and acceptance. Their historical narratives challenge modern readers to consider the complexities of gender and spirituality, and how these identities have been navigated through history. And last of the religions we're going to discuss related to eunuchs is Hinduism. Eunuchs, or Hijras in South Asia, occupy a unique place in Hinduism. Their presence in Indian history spans thousands of years, with mentions in texts like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. In these epics, eunuchs often play significant roles, sometimes as key advisors and protectors of royalty. The Laws of Manu, an ancient Indian text, references eunuchs, placing them within the societal structure. The Kama Sutra provides detailed descriptions of eunuchs, acknowledging their existence and roles. In Hindu mythology, gods and goddesses often exhibit fluidity in gender expressions, resonating with the modern understanding of gender among Hijras. The god Shiva, for instance, takes the form of Ardhanarishvara, embodying both male and female aspects. During certain rituals, the blessings of eunuchs are considered auspicious, and their presence is sought after in ceremonies like childbirth and marriage. During festivals like Diwali and Holi, their presence is believed to bring prosperity and ward off evil. They perform dances and rituals to invoke divine blessings. In temples, especially those dedicated to deities like Bahuchara Mata, eunuchs often serve as caretakers and priests. Hijras traditionally follow this goddess, worshipped as their patron deity. Over centuries, devotional texts and folklore have celebrated the divine powers of eunuchs, highlighting their role as spiritual intermediaries who bless the faithful. Despite their revered status in religious contexts, societal acceptance of eunuchs is still evolving. Many Hindu communities struggle to modernize their views on gender and adopt inclusive practices. Today, Hijras still influence culture, participating in religious ceremonies, blessing births and marriages for alms, and performing at festivals believed to bring good fortune. In 2014, India's Supreme Court recognized Hijras as a third gender, granting legal rights and protections. Despite this, many face discrimination and limited opportunities, leading some to begging or sex work. And now, home stretch to modern times. It all starts with the Enlightenment era. The Enlightenment era, spanning from the late 17th to early 19th centuries, emphasized reason, science, and individualism over social and political structures that required eunuchs. Eunuchs were rare in Europe during this period, unlike in the courts of the Ottoman Empire and Imperial China. Castrato singers, castrated before puberty to maintain high-pitched voices, existed but were not typically called eunuchs. They held distinct roles in music and the arts, not in political or administrative functions. Eunuchs were traditionally associated with harems, as guardians of women, or as court officials in various non-European societies. European nations during the Enlightenment moved towards bureaucratic and democratic governance structures that did not require such roles. Enlightenment values promoted personal freedom and bodily integrity, making practices like castration increasingly unacceptable. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, changing societal norms and advancing medical ethics questioned the morality of such practices. Major Enlightenment figures, including philosophers and scientists, advocated for humane treatment and emphasized natural rights. Meanwhile, in other parts of the world, eunuchs remained prevalent in traditional structures. Eunuchs played unique roles throughout history, even during the Victorian era. Although Victorian Britain wasn't known for a flourishing eunuch culture like ancient China or the Ottoman Empire, eunuchs still existed and had distinct roles. They were rare but present, especially in circuses and freak shows. These venues capitalized on the public's fascination with the exotic and unusual, featuring individuals with rare conditions or significant bodily alterations. Eunuchs sometimes performed alongside bearded ladies, giants, and other curiosities, captivating and horrifying audiences. Colonial territories like India and parts of Africa had established traditions of eunuchs, often integrated into local governance and societal structures. British officials in these regions interacted with eunuchs serving as palace guards, court officials, or entertainers. British perspectives on these eunuchs ranged from curiosity to disdain. The British colonial administration sometimes employed eunuchs in bureaucratic roles, leveraging their trusted positions within local societies. However, once returned to Britain, these individuals generally faced social ostracization and discrimination, sharply contrasting with their roles abroad. Medical and legal changes in the Victorian era further reduced the visibility of eunuchs. Advances in medicine and evolving social norms increasingly pathologized eunuchs, casting them as aberrations rather than integral members of specific cultures. Legislation against mutilation and exploitation also limited practices that led to the creation of eunuchs, reflecting broader shifts towards modernity and human rights. And eunuchs also influenced Victorian culture and scientific thought. the Victorian fascination with the other extended to their views on eunuchs. Scientific journals often discussed human anatomy and sexuality, citing eunuchs. Public health reforms and modern medical practices sought to eliminate unhealthy practices, including the creation of eunuchs. Health campaigns and educational efforts aimed to reform societal views on bodily integrity and human rights. Legal and social reforms in the 19th century curtailed the practice of creating eunuchs. Interestingly, the literature of the time occasionally references eunuchs, providing a glimpse into their roles and perceptions. They were seen as exotic figures, often misunderstood and marginalized, and the presence of eunuchs during World War II was unusual but noteworthy. Typically viewed through ancient historical lenses, eunuchs did appear in this conflict. During World War II, the German T4 program enforced sterilizations to eliminate those deemed genetically inferior, echoing Nazi genocidal policies. Many victims were sterilized to prevent reproduction. In Japan, during the occupation of Korea and China, forced sterilizations and sexual slavery were rampant. Comfort women, often taken from occupied territories, sometimes included emasculated individuals due to medical or punitive reasons. Eunuchs or emasculated men were part of these tragic narratives, both in forced brothels for soldiers and other disrupted wartime roles. In the Soviet Union, minor groups faced brutal treatments, including castration for political prisoners. In India, some hijras, a community of eunuchs and transgender people, were involved in espionage, using their unique social positions to gather intelligence. Similarly, in Southeast Asia, eunuchs or third-gender individuals sometimes participated in resistance movements against occupying forces. Wartime chaos often altered or reaffirmed traditional roles under duress. The complex intersection of gender, war, and cultural traditions meant eunuchs once again occupied significant roles. Whether as victims of sterilization programs, resistance participants, or intelligence tools, the fate of eunuchs during World War II offers a unique perspective on the conflict's social history. Today, some individuals, primarily in South Asia, still identify as eunuchs. In India, eunuchs, or hijras, are recognized as a third gender with distinct communities and cultural roles, often participating in ceremonies like births and weddings. In Bangladesh, hijras have gained official recognition and can vote as the third gender. Health issues are another major concern, as eunuchs often have restricted access to medical care and suffer from a lack of public awareness about their needs. Advocacy groups strive for better legal protections and opportunities for eunuchs. The role of international organizations and local governments will be crucial in improving their living conditions and ensuring their rights. Integrating into society, new policies focused on inclusivity and equal rights can offer vital support to their communities. And that's all the time we have for eunuchs right now. Be sure to give them a pat on the back from me if you ever see any. I hope you enjoyed the content you just watched or listened to, and if you did, definitely give this documentary a big thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to our channel as well. Our latest documentaries should have appeared on the screen by now, so you can easily continue on the History But Fast knowledge wave. Your one and only friend, History But Fast.